right, so we're going to now just do solving for a missing side. So now we're going to be solving for a missing side, and then we'll be solving for a missing angle, still using sine, cosine, and tangent, so still working with right triangle trig. So with trigonometry, you only need to know one side and one angle, besides knowing that we have a right triangle, because these only work for right triangles, in order to find a missing side. This is only for finding a missing side in a right triangle. The reason we're not using Pythagorean theorem here is we only know one side. If we knew two sides, then we could use Pythagorean theorem to find the missing side. So you'll need to decide how the given side and given angle relate using like SOHCAHTOA. So you'll need to figure out like which one you can use. So then we'll set up an equation using the appropriate trig ratio. So I'm going to show you or remind you how to do that on the back. When you're solving your equation, it's going to look one of two ways. X is either going to be on top or X is going to be on the bottom. So if X is on the top of the fraction, then you're just going to multiply to get X by itself. So we would multiply 21 times tangent of 56 to get our answer. If X is on the bottom, right, then we're actually going to divide. And we're going to divide 16 by sine of 72. And that's going to give us X. So that's what we would type in our calculator. One quick note, we do need our calculator to be in degree mode or we will get these wrong because all of our angles are in degrees. So to do that, you'll want to hit the mode button. And you want to make sure that degree is highlighted. If radian is highlighted, you need to go down and change it to degrees. Hit enter. Okay. All right, so let's work out a couple of these. So problem A, these say find the missing side for each given right triangle, round to the nearest tenth. Okay, so I like to circle the angle that they gave me, not the right angle, the other one, and then start labeling sides. So this is opposite, this is adjacent, and this is hypotenuse. They've labeled something on the opposite. They've labeled something on the adjacent. There's nothing labeled on the hypotenuse. So this is how you're deciding which trig ratio you use, because sine, cosine, and tangent each use different sides. All right, so opposite and adjacent, that's tangent. So we would set up our equation by saying tangent of the angle 22, and you always go in order. So opposite goes on top and adjacent goes on bottom. All right, and then using what we said on the front, since X is on top, that means we're going to multiply. So we would multiply 18 times tangent of 22, and we would get 7.3 since they said round to the nearest tenth. So that's how long that missing side is. Okay, let's do one more. So problem B, I'm going to start off the same way. The angle that they labeled is 56. So this is my adjacent, this is my hypotenuse, and this is my opposite. They did not write anything on the opposite side, so I'm going to be using the ratio that uses the hypotenuse and adjacent, which is cosine. So when I set up my equation, cosine of 56 equals adjacent over hypotenuse, because you go in order. So since X is on the bottom this time, we divide. The number always goes first, the trig ratio second. So 30 divided by cosine 56. And we found out that that missing side, the hypotenuse, was 53.6. Okay. All right, so then moving down to our last little section, this is going to be finding a missing angle. And so with trig, you only need to know two sides of a triangle in order to find an angle, only in a right triangle. Again, we're going to decide how those two given sides relate to our SOHCAHTOA. And we are still going to set up an equation using the appropriate trig ratio. But since we're solving for the angle this time, so if you look down, we're going to be solving for theta. We're not going to know what theta is. We have to use the inverse trig buttons in the calculator to solve. Okay. So if your equation comes out to be sine of your angle equaling a fraction, then you're going to be using the inverse sine, which looks like this, sine -1. If it's cosine, you'll be using the cosine -1. And if it's tangent, you'll be using the tangent -1. And then in the calculator, you would just, the parentheses will automatically pop up and you'll just put the opposite side over the hypotenuse. Or for cosine, adjacent over hypotenuse. Or for tangent, opposite over adjacent. So this is just telling you how to get that in the calculator. To get sine -1, you hit second and then the sine button. Okay, so just to show you, kind of for an example, if this was our equation and we were solving for the angle theta, it's set up as sine of theta equals 1/2. We would do second sine, and then in the parentheses, you type the fraction 1/2. And just hit enter, and it's going to give you theta, or the angle that you're solving for, right? So theta would just be 30 here. Right? If it was cosine, then you would do second cosine, and then whatever, they've already gotten a decimal here instead of having a fraction, so you would just type that in. Okay, so that angle's about 41.4. And then the last one here is tangent. So we would do second tangent, and then we would type that fraction in, square root 19 over 3. Okay, so 55.5. All right, so let's do one of these together. We'll just do the first one. So they put a question mark in problem A for the angle we are solving for. Start off the same way. Label your triangle. This is opposite, this is adjacent, and this is hypotenuse. There is nothing written on the opposite side, so we're only going to be using the adjacent over hypotenuse. This time we're solving for the angle. So now we've figured out, hey, adjacent and hypotenuse is cosine. So I'm going to set up cosine of x, because that's what I'm solving for. You could put theta here, you could put x. It equals adjacent over hypotenuse. So in the calculator, you're going to type second cosine 4/7, and that gives you the answer, 55.2. Okay. I'll post the answers to the rest of these. We're not going to worry about the last two. And then in your assignment, there's also more examples and videos if you need to see any more things worked out.